NSI is a group headed up by Kelly Worden. Kelly Worden is the first American Datu that Remy gave the title to. Datu, loosely translated, basically means leader, or chieftain, leader of village. And there were certain things that Kelly had accomplished and impressed Remy with that made Remy do that.
Kelly and I met several years ago now, but I can't remember just exactly what the circumstances were, but I think since we both were, in the martial arts, and we just kind of had a chance to meet one day, and I was mesmerized with him, of course, because he's like a fighting machine, but he's a man of great character, and I admire people like that.
Oh, I was utterly impressed. Yes, I remember when I first saw him was at one of the local tournaments here, and I think I remember him doing a staff form, and he was so dynamic, so powerful, so graceful and progressive in his own ways, not totally traditional. He was very progressive even back then, and I was just utterly impressed. And so we just kind of met and became friends for almost 30 years now.
I've known about Kelly for years. He's been in so many magazine articles. He's been all over the magazines for years and years and years. So I've always known about him one way or another. When I first got assigned to Fort Lewis, Washington in 2002, the first thing I did before I even had a house to live in was to call Kelly and find out where his classes were, because I knew that I wanted to train with him.
Push that in, that's it. Always protect yourself at all times, because he's the kind of guy that...
So I looked him up, sent him an email, he sent me a couple videotapes and a travel wrench. And then I called him on the phone. And the instant I talked to him on the phone, I knew Kelly was somebody I wanted to train with, because he's real.
After seeing Mr. Worden move for the first time, I knew that there was another person that had a lot more to offer, and I really started to follow him. So led me up until this point. I can't remember, a couple of camps now, I guess, 4 or 5 maybe, I don't even know. But 10 years worth of NSI training, I guess.
I thought at that point I'd been training, 18 years in martial arts. I got some sort of skill, some sort of something, but nothing. When he came out, he had the Billy Bob teeth in, and he just was totally non-traditional, totally crazy off the wall. But what really got me about the system was his flow and his ability to translate it from traditional arts into you put the stick in your hand, you go, oh, okay, well that's a downward foot block. You put a staff in your hand, oh, okay, well that's a downward foot block. That makes sense.
Work your center line here. At any point in time, all you're doing is releasing. There's going to be your strip anyway. Punch comes through and pack, you're right here, or you go right into your lock, So, bottom line, Singleton Wally, we're moving, and you're closing on that right into the interior. You decide you don't want to do anything. There's the hit, there's the trap, there's the lock, there's the catch, there's the lock again. So it's all going to come into that. If I close here, it's right here. I'm still right there. He strikes again, I'm still right here anyway. He punches through, I'm already there anyway. So you kind of look at where it is you're going, what it is you want to do. Bottom line is you want to close, just close. You're here, that's already trapped, that's already a fulcrum, that's already released. That's already a trap, and that's a hit.
When I saw Datu Kelly's information and his website, I felt that besides having this stick fighting, he had real experience as far as military training. I thought that would, what better than somebody who has that real fighting experience.
NSI's kind of re-established my passion for martial arts again. You kind of get to that stage where it's like, have I touched everything? Have I done everything? And the Japanese have a term called shoshin, which basically means beginner's mind. And I think that's what Datu's kind of re-instilled in me, is like there's that love and passion there. So
NSI, interesting. Years ago, when I first started teaching on my own, I had a studio with Sugar Ray Seals. I called it United Karate Systems, because we'd already traveled so many different variables as far as different martial arts systems. Ishin-Ryu was one of my base systems. Yaoman Nomad under Ed Lewis, who was a high-level Ishin-Ryu. practitioner, Earl Squalls, Gojo Ryu, Gojo Kai out of Chicago. And we had done Chunin Wei. Some people know who Keith Hirabayashi is, but Keith is now a movie star, Keith Cook. But his teacher was Roger Tung. So we had integrated a lot of different elements, Filipino martial arts back then. That was in the 70s. As things evolved, it got to be to where I really wasn't karate. So Dr. Yip and I, Dr. Waipo Yip is a good friend of mine out of Hong Kong, and we were discussing. He goes, well, what is it you do? I goes, well, it's natural, and your spirit has to change. You know, if you're defending just yourself, you're going to have one level of spirit. If you're defending your family, that's going to be another level of spirit. If there's weapons involved, depending on your environment, everything is based off of what's natural, what's functional. If you're injured, something else is going to be added to the equation as far as your limitations or the level of intent that you're going to have to accelerate to address those issues. So natural spirit is specifically that. It's an integration of all different martial arts that I've trained in.
Just having the demeanor to be able to accept he's at his level. You just don't find too many people without an ego big as the state that choose to say, well, you know, modern Arnis, the non-classical Gung Fu, there's a place for Muay Thai, there's a place for the Salat, there's a place for boxing, there's a place to know when you know you have to shoot. And so I think that there's a realism there, and it's really common sense, it's simple. It's a lifestyle. You don't get involved, I think, in NSI because it's really cool just to learn how to use a knife, you know. I mean, it really is, it's an integrated method of living, and martial arts happens to be the medium by which we do that.
With NSI, it's such an umbrella of styles that you will find something in NSI that you can attach to and go, oh, I feel really comfortable in this range. And then Datu will make you the best fighter you can be within that skill set. You know, so if you feel really comfortable with stick and knife, and then you can attach that to empty hands, then Datu will do that. If you want to be a kickboxer, he can show you the way to make kickboxing work for the street. You know, and I think as well that something that Datu teaches is mindset. A lot of other martial arts schools are more concerned about, you know, it's a great workout. You know, kick pads, get six-pack, get ripped and things like this. And that's great to a certain point. But if you don't have the mindset of this is real, there was a saying one time. Ed Parker, who created American Kempo Karate, was asked, "What is pure karate?" And he turned around and says, "When pure fist meets pure flesh, that's pure karate. That's NSI."
It teaches you not to be a victim. If you're not going to be a victim, then you're going to be aware of your surroundings. You're not going to go into harm's way. You're going to look around and say, you know, there's a group of people over there that I really don't like what they're doing. I think I'm going to walk this way, or I'm going to turn around and go that way.
I don't want you to go through a system that's based on rank and too much memorization of one steps, things like that. I want you to be able to see something that you know, and we'll use some slang words. When I want you to go in and do something to somebody, I don't want him to still stand there. I want you to know that you've clanged him. Natural spirit has that.
He says, yeah, but I can't put a finger on exactly what it is you are or what it is you do. He goes, well, that's what it's supposed to be, because I don't know. You know, a fight is ADD in action. You know, it really is. It's hit the piñata. You got a baseball bat, you know there's a piñata in the area, and it's shaped like a man. And every once in a while you make a hit and it makes a noise. Makes you seek the piñata with more authority, you know. So, you know, you look at it from that perspective. Everything else is tool development. I think when the concept of technique came into play, it was just something that we could sell or that the Americans bought into. But, you know, bottom line, we should be complimented for our self-expression and our self-growth and our self-realization that we can do it. That's the value of hitting a pad. That's the value of feeling, wow, man, this knee hits, and boy, if I got nothing else, I know that I can launch an overhead right or a hammer fist or a low shin kick from anywhere. So that's the value of training with a door, a doorway, a tree, a silent fighter, a wall, or an opponent if he happens to show up. You know, so it's really about tool development.
You know, there's a message over here on the bench here that says the key to immortality is first living a life worth remembering. That says it all. You know, we have the mixed martial arts scene out there now, and that epitomizes the ultimate physicalness of human being. But what is it doing for the mind? I don't think they've concentrated on that too much. You know, and when you look at the totality of the life in the world around us, you can be the most deadly person out there as far as the physicalness, but if you can't inculcate the philosophicalness in yourself, I'm afraid that you will not have lived a complete life.
There is some ethical, there is some moral, there is some social values, knowing when. You know, I didn't like firearms because I knew I was hot-headed when I was younger. So impact weapons, defensive skills, knife, you know, people perceive knife as such a malicious tool, but in truth, if you're good with a knife, you can actually shut somebody down, shut their mobility down, lunge towards their face and take out their base, stab them in the thigh. I mean, how many people can take a Charlie horse to the thigh, let alone a knife wound to the thigh? Yeah, you could have did a lot worse.
Okay, so we're working on the exchange. I'm going to empty out and do an interception here. So as I empty out, it's just a tap. Not enough to disarm him. He's going to throw a finger jab back into my face after I tap his hand. So I'm going to distance out from there. Just use a rising. Then as he comes to slash the body, that's when I'm going to go into crossada and enter into the same posture. Thrust and control. So I've got 3 defensive maneuvers. I'm going to stop, hit, intercept, then crossada, then go into my offensive engagement.
Conflict avoidance is probably the best self-defense of all. And then once you defend yourself physically, then you have to do it legally, then you have to do it civilly. And it may be, you're thinking just that it's a macho thing. It's better to avoid and neutralize and stay out of it and do the least amount of damage.
Kelly started in traditional martial arts. He started with Kung Fu, karate, Taekwondo, moved into the Filipino things, silat, stick, all of the different Filipino martial arts, all connected together. And when those all ran together, when you run Kung Fu together with modern boxing, and you connect Chinese staff work with Filipino stick fighting, eventually you see a common denominator of movement. And when you reach that common denominator of movement, like Bruce Lee said, everything flows together, and you have to be like water. You have to seek that place where your opponent is and take advantage of it. And if you're locked into one system where you can only do one certain move, then you're too rigid and you can't adapt.
Reality fighting is essential to the martial arts, because you can get way too artistic about the martial arts and too far philosophizing the martial arts, then it loses its practical ability to defend oneself.
How do we put our tool together? That's why single direct attacks are so valuable. Ideally, are we ever going to stop with any one thing? We shouldn't. But at the same time, if we can make that attack in distance, disorientate him, how much range could I cover if I was like, hey, I'd only throw in? And he's like, well, I could probably be pretty much over here. And he's still kind of disorientated. If that palm strike would have had any significant value to his eye socket, to his nose, then do I really need to maul him? No, and can I make that look like, hey, ah!
Well, the classical training that I've received, it's like learning classical piano. The whole thing is written out. They practice little pieces here and there, and perhaps you learn a lot of the little sensitivities to how to just hit the keynote correctly. But then when we come to, what Datu is bringing to the table is now jazz. It's totally different. You can have a classical piano player who's been playing for 20, 30 years professionally, and they have no clue how to have this flow and be able to create the music as you go. And that's what he brings to the table, is that he brings and shows you how you can flow through the techniques one to the other, and it's amazing, right? I love jazz and this whole flow of life, you know, how to bring that into our martial art world. So does that say classical music's bad? No. What it complements it, right? It gives a whole different way of looking at music, right? So that's the same thing Datu's doing. He's bringing a whole different way to look at, you know, the jazz of movement, right? The jazz of martial arts.
Well, if you look at brush, grab, strike or the form, you're looking at brush, grab, strike and brush, grab, strike. And some people say, well, the practicality isn't there. Ian's right here, I'm just going to brush and strike. I don't have to go brush, grab. All I got to do is parry that and hit. Or I decide I'm going to seek him out, and I'm going to, instead of going brush, grab, strike, and leaving myself open for that right hand, that's the one. Brush, grab, strike. I'm going to seek that second hand. I'm going to brush, grab, strike. Now I'm moving over here.
I try to train other styles because I want to look at my previous training through a different lens, through a different set of eyes, not so much because I'm trying to complement or reinforce anything, but I've been able to look back at my traditional training with such new eyes, with such a freedom of movement, that the traditional training, some of the things that didn't make sense or I didn't understand or couldn't apply before, now have just opened up like flowers. It's hard to explain how I'll look at something I've been doing for years that I pounded my head against the wall trying to figure out what was I doing here. And after working with Kelly, I get it, and it happens. And it happens almost immediately. I don't have to think about it. It's just there.
We started talking with Dr. Kelly. That's when he started showing me little things like, well, you know, this particular motion, using with a stick, it was just, okay, that's an X. Everybody knows that one. But you take that and you shorten that. All right, now it becomes a knife technique. You take this, there, now you take the elbows, you add the elbows in.
If you do a traditional karate system, you wear the gi, and it's all about the traditional Japanese respect, and everybody's even to the point where they're linear in the rooms, and a lot of people don't understand that the reason that everyone was linear and doing things in this such a way because places they trained in were tight. One of the great things I like about NSI is you can train in your jeans, you can train in your t-shirt, and you realize that you learn how to move with these things on, so you progress through. Yet there's lots of traditional lines within a progressive art. So what I see and what I'd like to see is people still studying the origins of the martial arts, maybe even practicing a traditional martial art to get their foundational base work, and then try not to get bound by that, release that, and move into progression. Now, whether it be an NSI or another system that's progressive, what it does is it frees your mind and allows you to move forward with ease, not bound by a specific system. So if I'm stuck in this system where I have to do this specific throw each time, but it just doesn't work for my leg because maybe my knee's messed up, well, the freedom in progressive art will allow you to adapt and to move into a position that allows for that.
Coming and practicing with Datu allowed me a totally different perspective to look at those same forms and find, you know, 2, 3, 5 times as much stuff as I had found on myself. And it's just been really nice how Datu openly shares what he knows rather than making you struggle so long to try to figure out for yourself, maybe, and then maybe spending a whole lifetime and not finding it.
Modern combat is science and movement. It doesn't rely on chi power, it doesn't rely on mysticism, it relies on science. And that's what Kelly has shown everyone, is that the systems connect together and can be used interchangeably. And if you slave yourself to one system, then, like Bruce Lee said, you'll be trapped by it.
So if I'm here and I go brush, grab, strike, now I'm going to go Muay Thai. Muay Thai, yeah. Oh, now I'll go to Silat, step on that arm and just take him to the ground. Muay Thai leg kick with a good stiff jab. Then when you close on a guy and you go to standing grappling mode, what would you call standing grappling mode? In essence, it is trapping. So
if you're focusing on that I just want to be a trapper, well, you're in the land of fantasy. But if you utilize the principles and the theories about position, control, maneuvering, controlling the hands, Jesse Glover once shared, he doesn't do trapping. Trapping is just a product or a byproduct of a properly placed punch.
Way back when, like 1978, since my school is located in Tacoma, right there with Fort Lewis, McChord Air Force Base, Bangor, and the Naval Base in Bremerton, National Guards. So military personnel have been coming to me for a long time. Primarily, I would teach whatever I taught. It got to be where we were close enough friends with different team members, different groups. They would literally go, hey, we want this, we want this, we want this. So that's how the evolution came about. It wasn't something that I perceived was, you know, my destiny or my calling. It's what evolved to be what people were asking for. A lot of times that was knife, it was baton, it was environment, it was turning the lights off, setting chairs and tables, and utilizing that type of scenarios to address issues, opening and closing doors, doing breaches on buildings, doing car extractions, doing doorman work, and then increasing that level of intensity according to how and who it was I was teaching.
I would not only say that NSI is effective for law enforcement and soldier personnel, simply not only for the reason that it can be easily transmitted, easily picked up because of its base simplicity. Of course, who's presenting it? Obviously, Mr. Worden himself at a camp like this or a weekend seminar. I've seen people really change, but he has the saturation method, so he says, where he just kind of floods and floods and floods, but the curriculum's been broken down into modules, etc., and it can be quite easily presented to individuals that way. NSI in and of itself, I've found to be extremely effective in both controlling multiple attackers, the ability to help the officer or individual learn to transition between their equipment, to keep an open mindset so that they're not just fixated on one person, you know, into that grappling straight into the ground when there's, you know, more things to worry about. The idea that NSI takes into account that you're in a real world situation, right? Everything we do is based off of training with boots on concrete, you know, deploying different tools, having to learn in that scenario. By far and away, I've seen nothing else come close to offering an individual the amount of skill that they would need in the real world in a short amount of time.
Kelly worked for a number of years with 1st Special Forces Group as their primary hand-to-hand combat trainer. And they were able to learn from him and then deploy and return from their deployments and say, hey, Datu, that worked for me. I was in this environment and a guy tried to do this and I put him in an arm bar and locked him down and I was able to get away even while I'm wearing all of my equipment. And that is the main difference between Kelly's teaching and say somebody from, say, the Gracies, where you go into a gym wearing shorts and a t-shirt. That's not what you're going to wear in combat. And when Kelly trains them, they're wearing their full clothing. They're going to ground on a hard surface, not a training mat. They're using the available things around them. They're using the environment, and that's a totally different way. It's not on a football field or in a gym with prescribed 1, 2, 3 movements. It is full out, meet your attacker, hook him up, neutralize him, put him down, and move on to the next guy. And that's something that no other martial art does.
In a real world application, taking just little pieces of what I got off of Kelly's videos, I used it a couple of times in real world situations. Through Kelly's system, a lot of things help. Okay, it gets you to thinking without thinking. Okay, it shows your body how to move.
I think what NSI does is it really cultivates a level of understanding about intent, awareness, where you're at all times. So people have to understand, why are they getting involved into it in the first place? Is it because of the rave of MMA? Don't get me wrong, I love training MMA for the exercise. I think that the conditioning is great. I think we need to get more conditioning in. But to think it's the end all and the liberator of martial arts, I think that's a fallacy.
Let's look at it from grappling, because grappling seems to be a big thing.
Our firearms failed apparently. So if you're military, that's a rifle, a sidearm, potentially a baton or a knife. So we've got 4 weapons failures. Now you're at kick range, you're at knee and elbow range, you're at hand and striking range, and now you're at grappling range. You've had 8 weapon failures or 8 strategic failures. If that, unless you were jumped, of course, then the issue there is to neutralize and negate as quickly as possible and bridge those gaps again, because who's to say there's ever one-on-one in a real-life conflict?
I'm a level 2 combatives instructor for the Army, though I think the Army Combatives program is very useful and valuable for soldiers, and for the intention that the combatives program has for soldiers. Honestly, I think the speed with which people can pick up NSI. You know, my son has virtually no training. He's been here for 6 months. He goes back to our regular club, and he does so much better than people that have been there for years. Kelly's instructional method, the simplicity of the material, but the depth of the material, you pick it up. It's almost instinctive. You pick it up quickly, and you can apply it almost immediately.
Literally address the fact that you're wearing body armor, that you're wearing, you're on concrete, you're wearing boots. So a Muay Thai kick is really a destructive kick. A strategy is using the environment plus the tools that you have on you, including your helmet, your chest plate, your body armor. Draw somebody in, slam them against your chest, step on their foot, push them down on the ground, stomp on their hands so they can't deploy weapons, those type of things. Program is being implemented into the Saskatchewan Police College, and I just teach a similar program as what I teach at Fort Lewis, or to military, to police officers. I just tone it down a little bit more. Civilians, it's the same type of idea. Of course, there it gets back down to the spirit element. Whenever you're in a dire situation, or the aggression level changes during a personal conflict or an approach, you have to address it accordingly. And I think we need to trust the judgment of civilians, trust the judgment of police officers, trust the judgment of soldiers.
So in essence, it could be a sit out right there. We're going to the outward wrist, whole hand, if we want the center lock. Okay? So now you got the backward crank into single, front strike, standing center, he runs through, gives me a 2-finger lock, pulling back around to frontal, 1-finger lock. And now that'll position, and now you're right here, now we got what? Here. See, and that allows just to disengage if his fingers will let go, and we could be on the opposite side and go with that.
A tactical program is something that is extracted from traditional martial arts. I know a lot of tactically efficient people that blow martial arts off in general, like, oh, that's martial arts, it has no value, or it's just too long a process to get efficient at it. Well, no matter what it is you're doing, it's all martial arts, whether we want to call it style or whatever. And yes, over-stylized progressions have a tendency to a degree, to be worthless. If you're over-dependent on a style, then you're probably not thinking properly for personal protection, self-defense, tactical efficiency. If I'm teaching police officers or military, which I do, it needs to be direct, efficient, and within the proper restraint and spectrum of force.
We're going right in on that hit. Right off that hit, go ahead and give me some energy. We roll over the top. So one of the things we talked about over here was, if I'm here and this is already collapsed, meaning I got no extension, that's going to make the bong sao or the rolling back fist have not much energy, because I'm here, so I don't really have a starting place. I only have kind of a weak takeoff. So I need this to allow this to happen. So that's a pretty important aspect with the travel wrench or without it. If I'm just here, I still need something to come over the top to release. See, at least with this structure, when I move it, I've got some extension, I've got some snap.
At what point in time isn't our goal to create leaders and not followers? So in military, police, or in a situation where there's not somebody there to lead you around by the leash, we need to teach people how to extract concepts and functional tools and skill sets themselves, so that they can go to a Muay Thai school and learn, a good stutter step and, you know, things that function, good elbows, good knees. Now at the same time, if they have a karate background, why throw it away? Just change that karate to close quarter. You know, you hit somebody with a rising block, and it would be called silat if you're so close to trap the foot and disrupt the base. But I guarantee you, good karate is good silat. It's just a different understanding of principle and movement. You need to understand it's about flow and dynamics and blending and integrating and not throwing stuff away. Oh, that don't work. Don't work because you haven't researched it. The structure and the concepts and the theories are there. You're just utilizing them wrong. So, you know, it's about natural spirit. It's about finding your path, and don't become anybody's puppet to do it.
So now he's here. So as I push more, he goes to a load of bong style back fist, bang. I'm just eating it right off that. So all he has to do is feel that. If I go here like this, all you got to do is jerk this. Boom, bang. Yeah, it'd be a great place right there to step into that horse stance and just go like this where we were before. It's a reference point of attachments. Oh, Chisao, it's not fighting. Everybody likes to say that. Okay, so I engage him like this and I push him away and I grab my tool. Can I use it for deployment and acquisition and teaching myself sensitivity or at least physical engagement so that I can get to a weapon? Yeah.
Water and Steel is an informal gathering of about any type of martial artist that you can imagine, gather in one place to mix and share and experiment with all of the different martial arts that have come to the table. And Kelly will take a piece of almost every martial art out there and mix them together in a giant blender. What you end up with is more of a thought process and a learning process, a self-learning process of fighting instead of a memorization process of doctrine. You learn to adapt and overcome from a selection of different tools in one giant toolbox. And Kelly supplies at Water and Steel the toolbox to take those tools from. So if you're in one situation, you suddenly have 10 different doctrines to take from and apply which one you want, because all of martial arts share the same movements, and many of those movements are natural. So the natural movements of combat can be mixed together and blended together until your movement becomes one of reacting to a threat and dealing with it from whatever martial art it might have come from.
Average day, well, we get up and get shaken and moving. We have our own chef, you know, so he cooks whatever he wants to cook. I don't restrict him. He's like a freestyle practitioner in his own right. But we get up, just start working on a specific curriculum. Sometimes it's on your staff, knife, stick, double stick, empty hand, grappling. Our grappling is usually done on concrete so people have an understanding of what it is we're doing, so that at least they can understand the reality of the situation. Of course, if we're going to go into an intense grappling format, then we'll go out into the dirt or out into the grass, do it there. We go down and train on the water, machete, stick, whatever the situation, but it's an integration. Kind of like taking requests prior to the camp. I asked people what they would like to do specifically this year, and we arranged the format to address the needs of those practitioners that are in attendance.
It does not matter what style you come from. It doesn't matter where you've been or what your history is. Everybody comes together and trains together, and everybody shares and learns. As much as it's Kelly's camp, Kelly also has other people teach. He's not about having to be the one all the time. He's willing to let other people teach. So it doesn't matter where people come from. It's about sharing and growing and evolving.
3, 4, no different than 1, 2, 3, 4, except for now I've got the step across. I can come to this lock, or I could have come to this lock. It really doesn't matter. On 1, I hook, hitting back, and I come to that armbar lock. So when I come into 1 right here, I'm really coming in here to get to this lock. So each sequence, 1, 2, now I can wrap and come into this lock. Each movement bonks out here, I can go straight in here and get to this lock, or to a step across.
I think too many people try to aggrandize the style or the method. That's why Natural Spirit is what it is. I provide what I provide, but boy, you know, I emulate Jesse Glover, I emulate Ed Hart, I emulate students of theirs, I emulate Professor Price's.
As technology advances, so too must the practitioner in martial arts. What is the difference between a firearm and a bow and arrow from the samurai era? It's the same principle, but move forward. So, you know, when people are moving forward and instead of using a stick, they use an asp or a tactical baton, it's the same essence. So the form is there, but it's evolved. And I think that's what NSI is all about. It's evolving. It's constantly moving forward and evolving. And if that doesn't work, then, you know, it's not useless, it's unuseful. So somebody will make it work within NSI. So that means it's a good technique. So it's real skill for the real world.
I think in the martial arts, for me, it's about learning how to live from courage. And that you know, we've got all kinds of people that say that. But I mean really live, right? That you learn how to use that courage and apply it in your everyday life and bust loose and not be afraid to be that passionate, you know, person doing what you love, right? And that's the big thing for me, right? And trying to share that with students and everybody to draw it out, right? So we all have better lives.
Everything that I've had and when we've touched on in the different systems, the things that really work are the things that are going forward, the things that are pulsing, the things that have energy. And that is Natural Spirit, and that is Datu Kelly. Everything is surging and moving and positioning.
Well, I thoroughly believe that Kelly has become a full circle within himself in what he does, and certainly, you know, he's not just utilizing the physicalness of it, but there's got to be a certain philosophicalness to it, and I believe that Kelly has made himself a perfect circle by, you know, involving both aspects of what's so important.
I say Datu Worden is one of the most premier martial artists in the world today. He's very, very progressive, and his skills are unparalleled and unquestionable in my mind. I've known him for almost 30 years, and I have always admired his ability as not only a martial arts practitioner in a practical sense, but also as a fantastic teacher. And he is so prolific in his teaching and in what he can offer to beginners and advanced students alike. And it is, I couldn't say any more about that.
What's important is that other practitioners find their path, find their direction, add that bit of reality in it. I think the greatest gift I can offer is the fact that, you know what, if I can do what I've done and people respect it, then if you're so good, just think what you can do. Seek your own destiny. And Professor said that. My God, if you do it yourself, no one can touch you. It is yours. But I've experienced a lot in life, and I think that's what everybody needs to do, is experience the whole spectrum of life, balance it in martial arts. Don't just give your life to the arts. Make your life an art.